Iran has categorically rejected U.S. claims of involvement in a plot to kill the Saudi ambassador to Washington. Iran's foreign ministry spokesman Ramin Mahmoudparas said such ludicrous accusations are based on the hostile U.S.-Israeli stances against Iran. He also condemned all terrorist acts and added that the goal of such fabricated scenarios is to sow divisions and help Israel out of its current isolation. The accusation by Washington comes at a time when reports say the U.S. is launching a media war against Iran. Tehran says Washington is seeking to divert attention from protests in America as it has failed to respond to its own people's demands. The U.S. is also the main supporter of Saudi Arabia, one of the most repressive and undemocratic regimes in the world. Well, joining us on the line from Washington to discuss this further is Hillary Mann Leverett. She's a former White House and State Department official. Many thanks for joining us here on Press TV. Now, I'd like to get your opinion, if I may, on these latest accusations against Iran.
I think the accusations are very, very serious. They point to a very bad situation now between the United States and Iran, and one that we should all be very concerned about.
Right. So what is behind this scenario, and why has it been raised now? What do you make of the timing of all this?
I think the timing is very peculiar. Why such allegations would be raised now? I've done an initial read through the complaint that the Justice Department has put out, and it looks like a very thin complaint in my read. It looks like they have somebody talking to their cousin in Tehran. There are not very many real concrete connections that we can see. I hope and would expect of the United States government that these allegations would, the information that they have would be brought in a court of law, would be examined, and would be cross-examined thoroughly, because they are very serious. And it's important to keep in mind that these serious allegations are being made in light of two prior incidents that we've had where allegations, very serious allegations, were put forward that did not amount to anything, or in fact amounted to some very false charges being made. One was, of course, we all know, the false manufactured documents that the United States found in Niger, in Africa, implicating Saddam Hussein's Iraq in a program for making of nuclear weapons. Those were false manufactured documents, but the United States believed them, bought into them, and then went to war in Iraq. And of course, there's another one that involved Iran, and that was back in January of 2002, when there was a shipment of 50 tons of weapons on a ship called Karine A that the United States charged was sent by the government of Iran to the Gaza Strip. And because of that charge, Iran was put into then George Bush's axis of evil speech, which destroyed U.S.-Iranian relations for several years. So we should be very careful and cautious about these allegations, take them very, very seriously, but really demand to see a thorough investigation of what's behind them.
Right. So as a former White House and State Department official, what are your major concerns after reading this complaint, coupled with the U.S. track record, as you've just outlined?
My concerns are, first and foremost, whether there is truth here, whether there is any basis for making these allegations, and why they are being done now. And even if there is a case, even if there is a basis for making these allegations, that they be conducted, pursued in a court of law in an appropriate legal manner, which unfortunately the past couple years under President Obama has been somewhat wanting here. So those are my major concerns. And then beyond that, I am very concerned that charges and allegations that have not been fully proved could be used to condition the American public to support more coercive action by the United States in the Middle East, which we've seen happen with Iraq and with very serious consequences. So what I do here in the United States now as a professor and as a public intellectual is I try to caution my students, my colleagues, to look at everything that is brought before them with a very cautious eye and to ask as many questions as possible. Not because the United States government is bad, not because the United States government wants to harm people, but because in an environment where the situation is so tense and where conflict really could be so soon upon us, that we do our utmost to make sure that any charges, any claims of terrorist activity are investigated clearly and transparently and according to the rule of law.
And how do you interpret these latest developments in the context of Obama's promises to take a different approach with regards to Iran?
Unfortunately, President Obama's promises, his rhetoric, his outreach to Iran, I think, was short-lived, and I'm not sure how genuine we could say that it was throughout the past couple years of his presidency. He did some important steps to change the rhetoric. I think his initial message, his initial Nowruz message, was evidence of his desire to at least change some of the rhetoric. But as soon as it became difficult, as soon as it became hard, as soon as he would have to put a strategy, a policy to implement a real change in behavior by the United States towards the Islamic Republic of Iran, he was not willing or able to do so. I don't know whether it is simply because it was too hard to do or whether he thought other foreign policy interests of the United States were more important to him at the time. But for whatever reason, President Obama, I think this is just the latest iteration of indications that President Obama is not willing to really pursue a policy of engagement that would be of interest to the Islamic Republic of Iran.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. That was Hillary Mann Leverett, former White House and State Department official, joining us from Washington. Many thanks for your insights here on Press TV.